Welcome aboard, everybody. Dr. Peter Glidden here, your steadfast advocate for health. Another live program coming at you February 10th, 2014. February 10th, 2014. Welcome to another live edition of Fire Your MD Now. And we say it like we mean it. The medical profession all around the world has been completely dominated and monopolized by the allopathic philosophical orientation of medicine taught to MDs and the pharmaceutical centrist application of medical treatments brought to the world by Big Pharma. These two industries have been feeding one off of the other for the last 100 years and have done such a marvelous job of propagandizing their positions that most people all around the world, most educated people, are of the false belief that their MDs know everything there is to know about medicine, when in point of fact, your MD only knows what they've been trained in, and what they've been trained in is just one small piece of the pie of medical science. It's one tiny piece of the pie of medical science, and it's really, really, really good. Well, it's really good for trauma care, surgery when it's necessary, and a handful of infectious diseases, but for most chronic health conditions, the MDs have little or nothing for you except expensive, dangerous, ineffective, side effect-ridden therapeutics that do not get to the root cause of the illness. The MDs have thrown the baby out with the bathwater in their disavowing the presence of a vital force in the human being, of disavowing the presence of a spiritual intelligence which guides the very metabolism of the body that keeps their brains active. It's one of life's greatest ironies, quite frankly, that MDs shoot themselves in their own foot as they're trying to articulate health recovery strategies, which leads to an interesting point. In a perfect world, it would be illegal for your medical doctor to say that they practice health care, because they don't. Now, it's illegal for people without medical degrees to call themselves physicians. You can't have a plumber put a sign outside of his or her office saying health care inside. You can't do that because that's not what they're trained in. Well, medical doctors, MDs, are not trained in health care either. They are not. If they were trained in health care, we would be getting healthier and healthier and healthier, but we're not. If they were trained in health care, they would have an eye towards prevention. If they were trained in health care, rates of heart disease and arthritis and high blood pressure and type 2 diabetes and autism and Alzheimer's disease should be getting less and less and less, but they're not. They're getting more and more and more. We need to call a spade a spade. Call the thing for what it is, because words make a difference. Words are important. If all of a sudden you're driving down the road and you see workers on the side of the Good Samaritan Hospital putting up a sign that says disease management and taking down the one that said health care, you would think a little bit before you went into that hospital, right? That's why they don't do it. It should be, however, mandatory that they call themselves as such, that they articulate themselves in the public forum as such, because your MD does not practice health care. They practice disease management. Now, you know, disease management has its place, I guess. But the consumer needs to know, but the consumer doesn't know, because the consumer is too busy with their JOB. They're too busy with their 3 JOBs, because that's about what it's necessary to have now in one household in order just to break even. You've got to have 2 jobs. Your spouse has to have 1 job. And if you've got kids, forget it. So we're stretched to the limit physically. We're stretched to the limit emotionally and psychologically, because we have to work at a JOB for the man, scrapping by just in order to keep a roof over our head. And guess what? The bank owns the house, the bank owns the car, the bank owns everything. Most Americans have at least $10,000 in credit card debt, and we have to work 2 jobs. What are you, nuts? So, well, that's the way that it is in the good old US of A in the 21st century. And so people are strung out. They're strung out. They don't have time to get into the intricacies of what the MD does and what the MD doesn't do. They're paying medical insurance premiums every month. Their employer is matching their medical insurance premiums every month, and Medicare is taking it out of their taxes every year. So most people just assume that the MD is the top dog in medicine in the United States, in North America, in the European Union, because the MD knows what's best, because the MD is better than everybody else, but it's not so. The MD occupies the driver's seat because of financial and political coalitions which were built between the pharmaceutical industry and lawmakers at the turn of the century that most people were not educated about in school and have completely forgotten. The MDs are in first place because they legislated themselves there, and they keep themselves in first place by disallowing anybody else onto the dance floor. They're the only ones. Can you imagine a Dancing with the Stars episode where it was just the same two people every year and nobody else was allowed to compete? American Idol, it's the same person every year. Nobody else is allowed to compete. Well, that's what it's like in American medicine. That's what it's like in Canadian medicine. That's what it's like in European Union and Australian medicine, and quite frankly, most other industrialized nations around the world. The MDs are in the driver's seat, not because their therapeutics are better, but because of financial and political coalitions which were put in place in the early 1900s and which have been kept in place by the gargantuan arms of the pharmaceutical industry. So all of the research that's subsidized by universities is pharmaceutical research. It's reductionistic research. It's research done through a reductionistic lens. Selenium was proven to reduce the occurrence of breast cancer by 82% 12 years ago. You know how much research has been done on selenium and cancer since? 0. Now, if you're a breast cancer survivor, you should be horrified by this. If you know someone in your life who's died from breast cancer, you should be horrified by this. Because those of us in the holistic medical community have known for 12 years. No, actually, I'm incorrect. It's 14, 15, 16 years. Have known for 16 years about the relationship between selenium and breast cancer prevention. 200 micrograms of selenium taken every day in the form of selenomethionine reduces the occurrence of breast cancer by 82%. That's a pretty good number, don't you think? Well, it's the most excellent number. So why haven't medical research facilities, why haven't universities taken this ball and run with it? Because it's not a drug. Selenium is not a drug. It's a non-man-made substance. It's a naturally occurring substance. You can't patent a naturally occurring substance. If you can't patent it, anybody can make it, and that significantly reduces the profit margin. You can't mark the drug up 6,000% like they do. You can't mark selenium up 6,000% like they do drugs. You can't. So we suffer and die needlessly because, number one, we've taken the wrong dog to the hunt. We've gone to the MD when we really should have avoided the MD for a chronic health condition. And we don't know any better. And then, we'll do a Google search for vitamins, and some 350-pound, pimply-faced person who barely scratched through high school has a website called Quackbusters or whatever, and they're telling you up, down, and all around town how vitamin therapy doesn't work and how chiropractors are selling snake oil and how naturopaths should be condemned and they're not real doctors. And, most people believe it because if someone opens their mouth and says it, it must be true, right? I mean, if you read it on the Internet, it must be true, right? So this is what we're up against. And this is why Youngevity was formed into a grassroots, multi-level marketing business. Because nobody knows what we know. Everybody needs to know what we know. And instead of fight the pharmaceutical industry in the classroom, instead of fight the pharmaceutical industry on the courthouse steps, instead of fighting the pharmaceutical industry up front, we're going to teach people how to ignore the pharmaceutical industry through the back door. And that's why we exist. We are actively right now forming a worldwide grassroots coalition of the informed, and we need your help. If you are sick and tired of being sick and tired, if you're frustrated at the unbelievable paucity of results delivered by allopathic, MD-directed, pharmaceutical-centrist medicine, and if you know that there must exist somewhere in the world science-based, clinically verified alternatives to the same, you found it. Join us. Learn what we have to teach and help us spread our message. It's a lot easier than you think. You don't even have to be able to spell vitamin to have a successful longevity business. If you can pass the driver's license test, you can be a successful longevity distributor because it is simple. All you have to do is learn how to point. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Dr. Peter Glidden. We're live Monday, February 10th, 2014. Stick around. Going to sunny California when we come back. I'm in my mid-50s, and it was a simpler time when I was younger. It was a simpler time when I was younger. You had your family doctor. I grew up in a very small town in New England. You had your family doctor. There was, I don't even think there was a chiropractor in my town back then. You went to school, you studied, you came home, your dad worked a job, mom stayed home. Those were the days, right? Not so much anymore. Things are changing rapidly. Things are changing rapidly. The population gets bigger. The population gets older. The population gets sicker. People have to go somewhere because they're sick. So they go to the MD, and the MD lets them down. And then they go back, and the MD lets them down. And then they go back, and the MD lets them down. And then somebody who's a friend of their neighbors says, you know what? And when I had that condition, I went to a naturopathic doctor, I went to a chiropractor, I went to an acupuncturist, and I'm completely better. You should give that a try. And so this is what's happening now. People are starting to try alternatives to drugs and surgery, not because they're really open-minded and because they're progressive and because they, have a finger on the pulse of politics and social reform, but because they're sick and tired of being sick and tired, and the MDs have let them down. And the only reason our professions survive is because we generate results. And there's going to come a time when our way is going to be the mainstream way, and the MDs are going to be relegated to the back of the bus. I don't know that that's going to happen in my lifetime, but it's inevitable. Because, the truth will out. Years ago, of course, everyone was convinced that women weren't smart enough to vote and that slavery was the only way to have a valid economic, climate. And they were both wrong. So now slavery's been abolished and women can vote. Well, guess what? We just kind of take that as the norm now, right? Well, 100 years ago, 70 years ago, not so much. A lot can change in a handful of decades. And with the presence of the internet and with the presence of the network, with the presence of Team Glidden, with the presence of Longevity Nation worldwide, we are here, in fact, to make a big splash in the pond of medicine. Join us. If you've been directed to this radio show because you did an internet search, because you found it all by yourself, then visit the website, fireyourmdnow.com. Click on the button that says Join Team Glidden, and someone from my longevity organization will be in touch with you, and they'll show you the ropes. If you were directed to this radio show by a pre-existing longevity distributor, get with them. Call them up. Send them an email and say, hey, you know what? I was just listening to Dr. Glidden, and I want to give this a try. What do I do? That's how we do it. We exist as a coalition of longevity distributors all around the world, spreading our message of science-based, clinically verified medical nutrition support strategies, foundation medical nutrition support strategies to help the body optimize its structure and function, which, of course, is much better than a poke in the eye with a sharp stick. Hey, our old friend Madru is back from California. Let's see what's cracking in California. Hey, Madru, thanks for the call. You are live.
Thank you, Dr. Glidden. I have a gentleman. I met him at a presentation for one of those coffee tea events, and so he tried to get me in his network, and I asked the guy, the presenter, to see, he says, aren't you going to join our network? And I said, no, I have something much better. And he said, well, what is that? And I said, longevity. He said, I can't touch that. So the gentleman who actually was it was his event, but the presenter went in his car. He left in his car and left. But the guy, I got his card and started talking to him, and I found out that he was having neck surgery the following week. And so he was in an accident. He has a problem with the C7 neck nerve. He had a surgery on that. And I talked to him a couple of days ago. He sounds kind of rusty as far as his throat, probably sore or whatever. But I want to be able to help him because I was able to. I also look at eyes, too, and I was able to tell him some of the deficiencies that he has. So I want to be able to give him this information and let him get well and bring him aboard longevity.
Well, because of, and do you know what caused the problem in the neck? I mean, was it a car accident? Was it a car accident?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Yeah, I can help you with that, Madru. That's easier than falling off a potato truck or shooting a caribou in Camrose. Stick around. I'll dial it in after the break. Ladies and gentlemen, February 10th, 2014, we are live. Welcome back, everybody. Happy Monday. Hope you had a good weekend. How about that Beatles tribute last night? Awesome! That's all I have to say. I'm happy I grew up at that time of the year, that time of the world when, the Beatles were new, and it was just a really great band. But Drew, are you still with me?
Yes, I am.
All right. So when we're Madru's telling us about someone who's had a automobile accident. He's got trouble with his neck because of it, and now the MDs want to operate. Well,
But they already have.
Oh, they already have. Okay, good.
Yes.
So what we do here is really pretty straightforward. It's a neck injury. That's a bone and a joint and connective tissue and neurological tissue, right? So we need to support everything. Which, from our point of view, is not that hard to do because what we do is comprehensive and holistic anyway. And so we don't really have a liver program or a kidney program or a heart program, but we do have a comprehensive medical nutrition program that helps everything. And then we can add on a little bit of extra bone support, a little bit of extra nerve support, whatever, and that's how we do it. And so by going the holistic route, this guy's going to save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Otherwise, he'd have to have, one treatment for the bone, one treatment for the ligament, one treatment for the muscle, one treatment for the nerve, right? And that stuff would add up because very little of it is paid for by medical insurance, which, by the way, is a topic for an entire different show. We should do a program about the way that medical insurance has evolved here in the United States. Perhaps I'll put that on the agenda. But I digress. How much does he weigh, Madru?
I would say about 220, 230.
Okay. 230 pounds, how tall is he?
I would say about 5'9".
All right, so that's part of the problem right there. He's probably about 40, 50 pounds overweight, right?
I would say maybe 40, and I think he's pre-diabetic. He's drinking the coffee. He says that's controlling it.
Well, that's one way to do it. I mean, that's actually a better way to do it than metformin. I mean, that's not a bad way to do it, actually. But really, he's missing the point like so many people. For no fault of his own, he just doesn't know any better. Of course, the main reason that people gain weight, it's not because they're lazy. It's not because they have a fat gene. It's because their bodies are nutritionally starved. And when your body is nutritionally starved, it will make you eat in the desperate attempt to fill its nutrient tank up. But the food that you're eating doesn't have the nutrients you need. So the more you eat, the hungrier you get, and you just put on the pounds. And then because everybody in the world does the same thing, you think it's normal, and the MDs have convinced you that you've got the fat gene, number one. Number two, blood sugar issues are not because of sugar, and they're not because of blood, and they're not because of a voodoo curse. Blood sugar issues, most of the time, are caused by nutrient deficiencies. Your body has run out of the stuff it needs to metabolize sugar. So I already know he's nutrient deficient because he's 40 pounds overweight. So he must be deficient in minerals because that's what causes blood sugar abnormalities. So I already know without even having seen him, no x-ray, no blood work, no nothing, that he has mineral deficiencies. And when you've got mineral deficiencies, you also have vitamin deficiencies. And now he's got a neck injury, and in order for his body to recover to its best ability, it's going to need raw materials to fix the part of the body that was damaged. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to intervene. Because of the blood sugar history, the recommendation here would be at 230 pounds, 2 healthy blood sugar packs. He needs a little extra neurological support, so we would give one extra bottle of EFA+. It's 2 healthy blood sugar packs, 1 bottle of EFA+, and for the cartilage support, he can do the glucogel. And I'd like to see him do the liquid glucogel. I'd like him to do 4 bottles of glucogel a month if he can afford it. If he can't do that, have him do 3 or 2, and then go to the supermarket and get Knox gelatin and do 2 or 3 packs of gelatin every day, because that's kind of like the poor man's way to get cartilage support into the body, right? So healthy blood sugar packs, EFA, and glucogel, sufficient to the cause. And also don't forget the simple stuff, because the simple stuff is simple, so simple that often we overlook it. Butter and eggs and foods that are high in cholesterol are important for him because his nerves are made from cholesterol. And you need to tell him there's no relationship between high cholesterol and heart disease. And if his MD tells him that there is, he needs to ask his MD to prove it. And ask his MD to prove it and say, look, prove it, or I'm writing a letter to the Surgeon General of the United States saying that you're full of crap and I want an investigation because it's my health, it's my life that's on the line. If you're telling me I need to take a cholesterol-lowering pill, I want you to prove it. I want you to show me the research that supports your position because I've got tons of research that supports the one that there's no relationship between it. So put up or shut up, Doc. That's, of course, what I would advise him to do.
Thank you, Dr. Glidden.
You're welcome, Madru. Hey, listen, Madru.
Yes.
It's people like you that are making all the difference in the world. So keep up the good work. Your community.
I sent a message to you too.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yes. Good. All right. I'll look forward to listening to it. Keep it up, girl.
Thank you so much.
Are the greatest. You're welcome. All right. Let's stay on the West Coast. Why not? Let's go down to Oregon or up to Oregon and talk to Marshall. Hey, Marshall. Thanks for the call. You are live.
Hi, Dr. Glidden. First off, just wanted to thank you for providing this invaluable service with your show and everything else you do behind the scenes.
Oh, you're welcome, Marshall. Well, it's my pleasure, really. I mean, what else am I going to do? Play golf all day? That gets boring.
Anyway, I've got a friend that had 3 cases of hematospermia since this past October. And I hadn't heard of that one either, but in any case, he was a little concerned, but I'm guessing it may not be such a big deal.
Okay, so the name of it was hematospermia?
Right, blood in the sperm.
Yeah, interesting. Well, the most common cause of that, I wonder how we figured that out. The most common cause of that is trauma, right? So wrestlers, for instance, and people that do martial arts, that are like involved with active sparring, they tend to have that more than other people because they get kicked between the legs and strangled between the legs more than anybody else. And the blood vessels in that part of a man's body are right there. I mean, there's hardly anything that separates them from the outside air except a very thin sheet of skin, hardly any fatty tissue down there. And it's very, very easy for those blood vessels to become compromised. I would also expect that this type of a situation would also be prominent in people that do bicycling for long distances. Bicycling, not motorcycle riding, but bicycling. That would be a very interesting statistic to look to see. But the most common cause of this, right, is trauma to the groin area, either overt trauma, like, someone kicks you between the legs, ouch, or kind of a more of a low-grade, constant day-to-day thing, right? You don't know if this guy commutes to work on a bicycle, do you?
He does not. He does ride motorcycle occasionally, but not bicycle. Now, possibly, maybe related, you tell me, is that he also had during the same time a mild case of hemorrhoids that he has never had before.
Well, that's interesting, yeah. So those two things would be related, and here's why. Because hemorrhoids, from our point of view, are caused by deficiency in the mineral copper. And copper is necessary for the elasticity of blood vessels. So when you run out of copper, sometimes people get gray or white hair. Sometimes people get spider veins or hemorrhoids or aortic aneurysms. It's hard to know why one person gets one thing and another person gets another, but that's a mystery. That's really where the research money should go. So not enough copper, of course, in some people's case will make blood vessels fragile and kind of, fragile is a good way to say it. No, they're no longer elastic. So it's probably the same thing. It's probably an accelerated copper deficiency. So a couple things copper's a mineral, right? So a couple of things can drive mineral deficiencies. Number one, extra exercise or extra sweating. So sometimes they'll get into a sauna kick all of a sudden, or they'll start hot yoga. Or, finally they save up enough money and they get a hot tub installed in their house, and now they're taking hot tubs every night, right? Whatever. Anything that makes him sweat more can drive a mineral deficiency. And interestingly enough, one of the biggest drivers of copper deficiencies, specifically copper, are large doses of vitamin C. So you want to ask him if he's been overdoing it with vitamin C lately. If he has been, then that's the culprit. Yeah, Linus Pauling, yeah, he was a textbook case of vitamin C-driven copper deficiencies. So he's either been sweating more, or he's been ingesting food that's really high in vitamin C, or he's been overdoing it with vitamin C supplements. Or, it's just kind of mineral deficiencies that finally caught up with him. So what do? Well, the intervention is the Healthy Start Pack and selenium. Now, because of the friability and the fragility of the blood vessels here, we don't want him to get a stroke, because if a blood vessel blows out somewhere deep on the inside of the body, then the body can clot it up. And if his body doesn't have the raw materials to handle that can be dangerous. So I'm going to take that back, and I'm going to say give him the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, because that has extra EFAs in it for blood support, and the selenium, appropriate for body weight, because Dr. Wallach's selenium has the requisite amount of copper in there, and copper and selenium have a nice little dancey balance going on between them. So Healthy Brain and Heart Pack and selenium. And, tell them to knock off any extracurricular copper or saunas or hot yoga or whatever. Does that make sense, Marshall?
Yes, and it relates to, he's in his early mid-40s, and he has gray hair, at least in part, for some time, which is another indicator of the copper deficiency, I guess. Yeah,
now, if there's anybody in the listening audience that's had any direct personal experience with colloidal copper supplementation, I want to hear about it. I've met 2 people in my life that have gone on some type of a colloidal copper supplement, and their hair went jet black or jet red or whatever it was before it was gray or white. Youngevity does not have a colloidal copper supplement. I don't have any clinical experience with it. I would love to hear from anybody in the listening audience who themselves has had direct personal experience with a supplement like that. Marshall, you're the greatest, man. How's it going, by the way, up there in Oregon with Youngevity?
I'm doing awesome, and slowly but surely working with as many others as I can spin their ear to the right direction.
Okay, great. So remember, towards that end, because human beings are a little thick and there's a lot of mental inertia, right, no matter what community you're in, it would benefit you, me, or anybody else who's wanting to maximize their Youngevity effectiveness to develop a simple enrollment. And the simplest enrollment that seems to be working, or that is working for different groups across the country is, I know a doctor who says you don't have to suffer with that. If I send you a link to this webinar, will you watch it? If I send you a link to this live webinar, will you attend? If I send you a link to this radio show, will you listen to it? Or if I lend you this CD or DVD, will you check it out? If you can get into that groove, man, you can talk to 10 people a day instead of 10 people a week, and it's a numbers game, Marshall. Keep up the good work, man. You're doing a fantastic job in Oregon. I'll look forward to hearing from you in the future. Stick around, folks. More to come. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks for joining me live again. It's Monday, February 10th, 2014. I got an email here from our good friends up in the Great White North. And they want to know, what's the deal if you have someone who's been exposed to asbestos historically and or has been working in areas where there's a lot of particulate stuff in the air. If the lungs are damaged, is there anything that you can do to get on the other side of it? Well, it all depends entirely on the amount of damage that's been done, right? I mean, we've all seen people that have had nasty fourth-degree burns, right? And, you know, they've got scars all over their body, and they're walking around, and they're living and breathing, but their skin is all scarred up. There's other people that have had, everybody's had a sunburn. Most people have had first-degree burns, and you don't see any scar tissue from that whatsoever. So it depends entirely when it comes to trauma to the body on how much trauma, how long you've been exposed to it, and quite frankly, too many variables to predict. So here's what we know. The human body knows how to fix itself. The human body wants to fix itself. All of the time, the human body is trying to optimize its structure and function. So rather than saying, well, I don't know, I think I'm just going to give up, it's always better to fight. It's always better to give your body a fighting chance. So each and every time, no matter how bad it seems, no matter what is going on, no matter especially what the MDs say. And we've all heard the stories of people who've been paralyzed and their MDs tell them they're never going to walk again, and then a year later they're walking again just because they willed themselves back into it, right? So nobody knows where the point of no return is, but what we do know is that the body knows how to fix itself and that the body wants to fix itself. So in each and every case, we're going to support that. Now, the good news here is when we do the right stuff, it generates results. So most people, there are exceptions that prove this rule, but the vast majority of people who come to us with a health concern only have to commit to our program for 90 days to judge it up or down. Do this program for 3 months for 90 days, and then you tell me whether it's working or not. If you follow my advice for 90 days and zero happens, nothing happens, no change anywhere, and I'm not talking about subtle change, I'm talking about nothing dramatic happens in 90 days, well, then you should stop the program and do something else, and I'll eat my hat. I've never seen that happen. So, the proof of the pudding's in the eating. We give our body the stuff it needs to fix itself. We keep our fingers crossed, and we see how far back we bounce. So what do? Well, particulate damage, well, so it's the lung tissue that's been compromised here. So what do? We support and promote healthy lung tissue, and we do that with the Healthy Brain and Heart Pack. I know it should be called the Healthy Brain, Heart, and Lung Pack. It's not, but that's what we do. The Healthy Brain and Heart Pack with extra selenium and Z-Radical. Z-Radical, as much Z-Radical as you can afford. The Healthy Brain and Heart Pack, extra selenium, Z-Radical for 90 days. Plus, of course, it goes without saying, but I'm going to keep saying it. Everybody has to stop eating the 10 bad foods. I mean, you wouldn't pour gasoline into a gasoline tank that had holes in the bottom of it, would you? I mean, if you're Al-Qaeda, you might. If you're an idiot, you might. So you don't want to put nutritional supplements in a body that's leaky. You don't want to take 2 steps forward and 2 steps backwards, right? So this is a 1-2 punch. Our medical nutrition is a 1-2 punch. Number one, you give the body the stuff it needs. You take the right supplements in the right amounts appropriate for your body weight. Number two, you stop eating food that's coming up the works, period. No whining, no complaining. Don't be a little schoolgirl about it. Just shut up, stop eating these bad foods, take your vitamin supplements, and call me back in 90 days. You want to get a list for free of the 10 bad foods? FireYourMDNow.com. Click on the link to sign up for my free newsletter. Free's a pretty good price, don't you think? As soon as you become a subscriber to my free newsletter, you'll get a list of the good food, bad food, plus a link to a video called Against the Grain. Knowledge is power. Let's pick it up a notch. You're going to love how you feel. Stick around, folks. We're going to go talk to Danica in Alberta, Canada when we come back. Danica Patrick, you say, the famous race car driver? We'll just have to wait and see. I'm Dr. Peter Glidden, and this is Fire Your MD Now.